want people to provide input to Dee and let her know your thoughts and ideas and feelings as far as the venue itself, okay? So now we're in this venue because Jacob and Kayla has went through a process of trying to find the right place, and this is where we ended up at. And I'm one of those people that drive where we go and what we do by what you say as members. So you need to provide that input. Andy will probably send out a survey, but the easiest way of doing it is to just let Dee know when you are leaving or whatever. Whenever you pass by there, tell her you think it's great, you tell her you think it sucks, whatever it is, you tell her what the answer is that you feel. So tonight, I'm going to be sort of brief with this part, but tonight we have Bob and Sue. Where's Bob and Sue at? I don't even see them here. They're right there. Okay, I'm looking around all the way over here. And last year, they did a presentation that was associated with basically what they did to build their portfolio down in Canandaigua. So they have over 100 units, and basically that was a great presentation. And what we wanted to do today was actually, we're changing sort of the format. We're going to go to a meeting time ahead of time where people can meet and greet. Then we're going to shorten the time period associated with the actual presentation itself. And then we're going to have some networking afterwards. So that's the sort of new format. And so just need your input back on that piece too. And so today what we're going to do, an abbreviated version of how you use numbers to drive how you select a particular unit. And Bob is gonna basically talk about how he uses the numbers to drive his selection and what he does to actually select his portfolio. And that could be a whole week's class, but we're gonna take it and put it in about 30 to 40 minutes. So so we're looking forward to that. Then one of the key things I need to make sure that I mention is, remember last year we had a picnic like we do probably for the last 12, 15 years. We've had a picnic. Picnic is going to be at Webster Park again. I know some of you are probably aware of the fact that at this picnic, I have had 2 indications that the mayor of Rochester will be in attendance. Okay, so invited them and got input back. They gave me some information to give them some detailed information about where it's going to be and what they need to talk about and all those sorts of things that I need to get back to them with that. We'll talk about that tomorrow in the meeting that we, in our staff meeting that we normally have. But the key thing is the objective of the picnic has changed a bit from what it was in the past. It used to be just all 3 members talk, no business of any sort. You might, Joe Labarbera might try to make a deal or something like that. That was all acceptable, you know. But the objective now is for you to have direct face-to-face interface with the politicians who decide what's going to happen. Okay, so Jacob, through the Housing Coalition and other groups, we've been really, really busy over the last year, and we were able to be successful because we had city council members sitting right there at the holiday party. We're talking to them directly. So when we got to the point where we were going to be talking about no eviction without good cause, and the push coming from Albany and other areas around, and you know, a couple of, well, to be specific, 3 individuals on city council that was really trying to push through. We were able to counteract that because we had direct face-to-face input from folks who were sitting there part of the vote. So we ended up getting 6 people who voted no, and that didn't get passed. And we want to continue that type of ability to have them not just know about the organization, not know about the Rochester Housing Coalition, but also to know who the people are and to know them face to face and can directly say, well, I know these folks and therefore I understand what their input is, what their thoughts and ideas is. That's the main reason that we now are having the picnic. This shift, okay, it's shifted a bit because times have shifted a bit. And that's what we really need to do. So they'll be there, and I've sent out invites to probably a dozen politicians. Let's use that word. The main thing for you to do is to we don't want to have any type of confrontation. We want to have open discussions between them and you so they understand what it is that you want to have happen, and they're just not listening to just the people who represent the unions for the tenants. Okay, so the only other thing that I had that I wanted to make sure is we have a vendor member here. And I'm going to give Dave from JM Capital just 1 minute to talk about his organization and what he does to help support you. Because I think everybody who's doing real estate probably needs capital at some point in time. Dave, come on up.
This one right here with the 20 green light, that's all you.
Okay. Like this, hold it up like this. Thank you, Leon.
You can hold it, you can just leave it on the desk.
Okay.
They should be able to hear you.
Thanks to all of you for receiving me. JM has been a sponsor here for quite a while, but this is my first visit here. I live in Atlanta, and I gotta say, I've attended a lot of REIAs. This venue, Leon, I think is great. I like the setup, I like the food, I like the mingling. I think it's really a nice affair, and you guys should all feel very happy to have it this way. Now, right now, all real estate investors are wondering about interest rates and availability of money, which are really good questions to be asking right now. I can tell you that interest rates are moving, and every time the Fed takes an action, every lender takes an action. So expect in July or later in July or early August, another rate bump. It's going to happen. Anything that's locked in before then is locked in before then. Even so, we still have plenty of money. Our lending conditions are very reasonable and easy to qualify for. Our money is private. It doesn't come from a bank, but we have lots of it. I mean, we have got billions available for lending right now. So we're able to and want to make loans. We can close pretty quickly. Our phone number, remember this, is 844-WE-CLOSE. Please call that number. Please call that number and ask for Dave. Okay, even though our money is private money, it's not hard money. Hard money always means ultra expensive. Our money competes with banks. Okay, we are institutionally priced money from private sources, easier to qualify, easier to close. That's what I'm going to leave you with right now. We make every kind of real estate loan. Does anybody want a business card?
Yeah, okay. So before Dave, you got the whole audience riled up here. So one thing I need to mention about the picnic, you must register for the picnic. Okay, you must register. So what? Okay, it's all on the website, but it's August 11th. It's a Thursday evening, and it starts at 5 o'clock. And we normally try to stop at around 9 because it takes us an hour to clean up everything. Okay, so was that correct, Joe? I can see you. I can see the wheels rolling. You know, so I just wanted to make sure. So before we have our keynote speaker come up, Jacob, you had a couple of words that you wanted to mention associated with. Yes.
Hello. Hello? I need a mic.
Okay, he got this one.
You speak loudly and it'll pick you
I
up.
could speak loudly. Yeah, I'm in the Army. Okay. Hey, my name is Jake. I'm with the Rochester Housing Coalition, a group of landlords and property owners that advocate for your rights in the city. And I'm on the board of a legislative committee for upstate New York. So we fight for your rights at the city level, at the state level. I don't know if any of you are following, the state's trying to pass good cause eviction, which means your leases are now indefinite and you cannot terminate them, right? Albany City passed it. In the city, one of our colleagues filed a lawsuit, found it unconstitutional. It was revoked, right? That's a big success. The problem is next year, they're going to try and pass it at the state level. We are going to be coming to you with surveys and questions from the REIA, asking you to get involved, asking you for survey participation, asking you to get on the news, talk to your lawmakers, etc. If you get those emails, please, I ask you, I beg you, get involved. We need stories from individual people, not data from some analytic firm. We need stories. So when you get the emails from the REIA, from other groups asking you to do a survey, it's not meaningless, I assure you. We're asking you to get involved because we've had successes, we've had victories, but it comes at a lot of individuals coming forward and sharing their experience. That's what I have. I think now we're going to Bob. Oh, nothing else?
No, just real quickly. So I want people to recognize that Jacob joined our organization and came on really, really quickly, really got up to speed really, really fast. And he's doing a lot of things to really help all of us in this room. And so Jacob and Kayla, I may or may not mention it earlier, but they basically helped to select this place. And so we want to make sure we thank them for that and look forward to continuing to get your support. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our keynote speaker to come up. And one of the things I didn't mention, I knew it was something I was forgetting. If you look at Freedom First, it is a not-for-profit organization. That means everybody, and definitely me, my wife beats me up about it all the time, work for free. Okay. I'll hear about that when I get home tonight. But you know, the key thing here is that Bob Taylor is one of the board members of Freedom First. And so people may not know that, but we already have like 5 board members, and Bob is one of those folks who provide guidance to us around what it is we should do, how we should be doing things. And so just want to make sure I recognize Bob and his support that he's given us in that arena as well. Bob, turn it over to you.
You're already wired for sound.
Okay. Test. That work?
Let me see if we can pump your volume up a little bit. I'm not getting fresh, I promise.
Okay.
I know we're in front of the room full of people. I don't want to weird you out. I think we're good. All right.
Got it?
Yep. All right, this is yours.
Hey. Okay, so first off, I'm humbled and honored to be asked to present and to present on this topic. So looking forward to what I can share with you folks tonight. FREIA has been very meaningful in the development and education of myself and my business partner, my wife, Sue Taylor's right over here in the pink sweater. We each get 1 vote. So if we don't agree, we don't move forward. But it's a great way to work together. And FREIA has just taught me so much, working with professional landlords who are just could see each other as competitors, but instead share their experiences and learnings. And for the benefit of the real estate investor community, it's an amazing thing. And I feel like I've got a master's degree in real estate from attending these meetings. So a great thing for us in our lives. We consider ourselves kind of a mom and pop shop for real estate. We're not a big corporate type deal. Sue and I divide and conquer. She has strengths, I have some strengths, and we make it work and kind of play to those strengths and run our business in that manner. If you don't mind, I'll start with a
with a landlord joke, probably a bad landlord joke. Is that okay? So the landlord says, how are the new tenants above you? And the renter says, they're okay, but it sounds like they bang on the floor every night at 2 o'clock in the morning. The landlord says, that's outrageous. I'll talk to them at once. The renter says, no, it's not that. It's not really that big a deal. I'm usually up practicing my trumpet anyway. Now this is so real to us. We were in this situation last week. Tenant upstairs, tenant downstairs. He's banging on hitting the mop on the floor because she's making noise. She calls the police. I get a call 1:30 in the morning. We're getting dressed, running over to this apartment to solve this exact problem. But anyway, that's real estate, and we all have our fun stories to tell about it. Next slide. Next slide. What do you want me to do this?
Do this if you want.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. So let me just clarify. I have my own disclaimers. Leon's got disclaimers. I'm not a CPA or an accountant, but I do our books, and I'm a financial management guy for our business. I'm not a real estate appraiser, but we do buy and sell commercial real estate. So we're into this in terms of making these kind of calculations. I'm a mechanical engineering by trade, but it's been a long time since I did engineering. I do woodworking as a hobby, but I'm a novice. And we're followers of Jesus Christ, and we try to run our life and our business according to his principles, but we've got a lot to learn there as well. So this is what you get. It's very much a practitioner's view of where we're going to go tonight. But it's, boy, that thing moved quick. But it's real. It's what we've done, and it's our personal experience. So the agenda, I'll talk a little bit about our journey. I'll talk about a financial model. I'll talk about real estate valuation. Then I'm going to do some real life examples of properties that we've bought and sold that can bring some clarity to what's happening. And then I'll have a quiz at the end and show you a few facts and figures and say, what would you pay for this property? So that's what you can look forward to as we move forward. Boy, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, so let me just give you a little bit about our portfolio. So we started in 2011. We started purchasing properties in Canandaigua, New York. If you're familiar with Canandaigua, it's this little burg, 10,000 people on the top end of Canandaigua to invest. And these are our properties. So they're all within 1 mile radius. We've kept them very tight, and there's some huge benefits to that. Some of our early learnings is geographic consolidation is big pluses. Mainly, we know the code people by name. We know city officials. We know the market from a rent point of view. We know which neighborhoods are good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods. There aren't any bad neighborhoods in Canandaigua, but we know the good ones and the less good ones. So it really works out well. We had up to 120 units. We did sell a few, and we just sold a small apartment complex. So we're currently at 83, but it's a nice portfolio, and it's been a wonderful place to invest over the past 10 years. So these are our multi-unit houses. This is a 10 unit, and a 5 unit, and a 3 unit, just to give you some idea of what we have. And then these are our commercial properties. So we have 2 historic properties. We got a 12 unit, an 8 unit. This is what we just sold a month or so ago, 23 units. And then we've got Chosen Spot Apartments. That's a senior property with 44 units, which is kind of a gem for us and a really nice investment. So just in terms of our journey, some people mentioned that I should share this. So I was with Kodak for 38 years, but when I was 56 years old, I realized due to some strange circumstances, I had no pension. And I'm 56 years old, I have no plan for retirement. So our son bought a double. I couldn't believe the numbers. He got Obamacare money, and they gave him this house, and it had tremendous cash flow. And I'm going, wow, this is unbelievable. Let's buy a few doubles. So we said, we'll buy 10 doubles. That'll give us 20 units. give us a nice augmentation to our Social Security, and we'll be able to live on this deal. So that's where we started out, 10 doubles. We bought a double in 2011. The next unit our real estate friend brought us was a 10-unit deal. The next one was a 12-unit deal, then a little strip plaza, and on, and we ended up at 120 units, and we're okay in retirement, if I can suffice it to say. So that's kind of where we ended up. It's worked out well. Finally, I was afraid Kodak could lay me off any day because they were laying everybody off. They never did. I finally had to retire in 2018. Life has been good. So we are big believers in real estate as just a very solid way to invest. You know, they say, let your tenants pay the mortgage. It's just totally true. You hold the property for 15 years. We're a buy and hold type approach. And 15 years later, you own this asset that's appreciated and is throwing off 50% cash flow. And you know, it's a pretty nice deal. You've got to put some intelligence into and some research into making that go. But we're big believers in this as a financial planning and financial security methodology. So tonight, the topic is valuation of property. How do you set the price? What do you make? What do you offer when you're going to buy a property? It's a pretty critical decision to your whole real estate business. Or you're selling, what can I sell for? Same question, you're just on the other side of the deal. And so I'm going to go through, I'll say, you know, in the interest of time, we'll focus on a few of these methods. Some of them are just simply obvious, and you can decide whether it's a good approach for you or not. So we'll look at the typical methods. The cost to build approach. In today's world, this is in my opinion, not very relevant because costs to build are just through the roof. The cost per unit, cost per square foot, gross rent multiple. This is a really simple approach that we like from a standpoint of an initial view of where does this property stand in terms of what its value might be. Sales comparison approach, but in Canandaigua at least, there aren't very many comparisons that are anywhere close to the types of properties that we're purchasing. So it doesn't work very well. It just doesn't add a lot of value. Cap rate, kind of the standard in the industry, is the capitalization rate. I'll spend actually quite a bit of time talking about this one because in my opinion, this is the key benchmark for us and our experience and our approach is cap rate. But some people look closely at cash on cash return, return on investment, net present value, internal rate of return. We'll discuss these very briefly. And to me, scenario analysis or what if analysis, powerful tool to be able to look at where might this investment go? What are the opportunities that it may present? And a powerful tool as you evaluate whether or not you want to get into a particular property. Okay, I'm going to start off with this concept of it's all about the rent and the future rent, because it is. Expenses are they're certainly not fixed. They do vary by property, but an awful lot of things that are key expenses for a landlord relatively known and able to be estimated and assumed when you look at insurance, when you look at property taxes, when you look at even utilities. If you've got no landlord meters, which is what we prefer when we do a property. So you can not discount, but you can kind of put in a plug number for your expenses and be able to look at the rent as the driving factor for both your income side, but also what's driving your net operating income. So it defines the basic value of the property. The gross rent multiple concept will give you a very quick estimate of the price range of a particular property, or the current value is effectively based on the rent that can be achieved. It estimates payback on an investment. So if I say I'm going to put in 10 grand, I'm going to get back $200 in rent. Is that a good deal? Well, you can quickly do a multiplication and see how much I'm going to get in terms of additional value to the building and how quickly I can recover that investment based on the rent increase. It drives short and term, long-term profit by looking at your net income and then planning for long-term. Where am I going to be able to go? How can I get more rent out of this building? And there's, 10 or 20 different ways to do that, but it's it's a critical piece of the of your analysis of a particular property. So how can I earn and justify higher rent? This is the key question. So it comes down to, how do I get more rent when I look at a building that I own or a building that I would like to own? We're careful when we raise rents on existing tenants. We have, there's a loyalty factor there, there's a retention factor there. So we go slow. So when we look at what we can get for higher rent in terms of just comparing gap to market, we go slowly with the current people. But for the new people, we want to make that apartment look as nice as we can in terms of bringing it up to the best part of the market. But we tend to hit them with what we think is full market value on rent. In today's climate, it's hard to tell where full market is, but it's moving so quickly. But that's our approach for part of the rent equation. And then, of course, everything that you do to the building and the projects that you look at to increase rent are critical as well. Old adage, the higher the rent, the better the resident. This has been our experience. If we take and look at our apartments that rent for 600 and 650 range, we get a class of resident that are often struggling and week to week on their payments. They have trouble with their car. They can't make rent. But if you're up in the 900, 1,000, 1,100, people tend to have more stability. They have obviously have more income. They have better jobs, and life just becomes a little bit smoother in that approach. So there's double benefits to being able to raise rents. So rent trends, you guys are probably pretty familiar with this, but this is a very recent chart. And you can see from June of 21 to June of 22. So 12 months worth of data. And this is just unheard of. It is unheard of, in my experience, to be getting not only double digit, but 12 to 14% year-over-year rent increases for 10 months in a row. This is where the US market has gone. Now, you've got to assess where Rochester's gone or where your particular market has gone, but this is national data, and it is an incredible thing. Now, they've made the point that, well, the last 2 months, it's bumped down. So have we peaked, and is it going to come a little bit more under control? Maybe. But nationally, for almost a full year, rents are up 10 or 12%, or 12 or 14%. And that's to be market competitive and to keep your properties at market rent. You should be questioning whether my rents should be going up this much, at least for new tenants. And what is your path to get there on even the existing tenants? Because this is one huge, I'll say, difficulty for tenants. It's the reality of the inflationary period that we're in, but it is one huge opportunity for landlords, and it's a missed opportunity to cover the expenses that for you are going up. Property taxes, insurance, and utilities, all that stuff is going up for me. You've got to be able to keep up, and you should be evaluating this very closely to see that you're doing that. This is more similar data. This is 132 markets across the United States, and the national average 14.8 year-over-year growth, all asset classes. So this includes retail, office, residential, and some of those asset classes haven't gone up as much as residential. So this is a pretty amazing thing. Yeah, the rents have taken off. And as I just mentioned, the value of your property is tied to your rent. So these properties have gone up, whether you know it or not. And if you're out there looking in the market, you do see it, because the prices have gone through the roof, at least in Canandaigua, for the acquisition of investment real estate. So in terms of an analysis model, this becomes a critical tool that everybody has to have. In my opinion, you need to be able to run your own numbers. You need to be able to compare opportunities. You need to be able to make better decisions based on not emotion, but on the math of what the property yields. And you want to be able to understand the levers and sensitivities around that model for that particular property. And if you've got your own financial model where you can dump in key inputs and see the outputs come out and then play with it, this becomes a critical tool asset for your business and for your decision making. So why develop your own, or know the details at least and the functions of when you've borrowed? And you can download these things from the internet all over the place. They're readily available. We developed our own. And so I just know it, and I know the formulas, and if it's, if I make a mistake, I can see it. And so I can be sure it's accurate. I can understand the calculations, and I can see an error when, I screwed up a formula or something of that nature. But having a spreadsheet that allows you to do this is important. My inputs are pretty basic, price, assessment, asking price, down payment, interest rate, amort, term, capital investment required upfront, rents. And then these I can assume or use the seller's data, occupancy, insurance, property taxes, other expenses, same thing. I can use what the seller tells me, which may or may not be true, or my own experience on repairs, property management, utilities, cleaning, advertising, capital reserve, tax rate assumed. And then outcomes just boom, everything just comes out in terms of the outputs on the other end of the model. And we can quickly look at what we consider to be key outputs, which we look at this gross rent multiple, we look at cap rate, debt coverage ratio, cash flow. These are some of the critical metrics that are probably important to some of you and to us as well. And then we can also look at the property value as we make changes to the rent through the gross rent multiple approach. So this is the kind of the way the model is constructed. This is just a snapshot of our model on one particular property. And you kind of got to envision this part goes below here. So we put in a bunch of inputs that I just described in terms of purchase price and the financial assumptions that we're making on financing, some one-time costs, and we add in our rents, we add in our operating expenses, and then we come down and end up with our, the first key metric, your net operating income. And then over here, our analytics summary, we end up with all of these outputs that tell us what that property is all about from a financial performance point of view. And you get a kind of, I'll say, a nice broad look at what the property is doing. And then we start with running what ifs. We start with what the seller tell me this property looks like. And then we back off and say, what do I think this property? Am I going to change the price? Are we going to change the occupancy rate? Are we going to change whatever? And then we're able to look at those and see how the cap rate changes. We're able to see how the return on investment and these other metrics come back to us and say, okay, these are some changes. What if we remodel the apartments? What if we, in this particular case, it had abandoned space, and the seller told me, oh, you can get $700 for that abandoned space. That's great. You couldn't, but you think I can. But if we invested and put in 2 apartments, what could we get? And then that's our input to what can happen to this particular property. When we were all done with this, we had a worst case cap rate of 7% based on the different what ifs we did, and we had a best rate cap rate of 12%. And we liked those numbers, and we bought the property about 2 or 3 years ago. Historic property on Main Street, and it's been a lot of work because we've done a lot of investment in the property, but it's a gem, and it's going to pay off for us long term. So the financial scenarios that I like to run, these are typical, and I've covered some of this at offer price, the data provided, at expected counteroffer price, at my expectations for expenses and occupancy and key terms. After stabilization, a lot of times you're going to get into a property and you realize, okay, I've got to do some maintenance work that's been deferred. I'm going to turn over some tenants that aren't working out very well. Maybe the occupancy is not where I want it. And 12 months later, after we get the thing, I'll say under control, what's it going to look like? So that's an important number for us. Then we look at major upgrades? Are there renovations that we can do? Maybe this is a 3 or 4 year plan. What's going to happen if there is a gap to market? And today, almost every property, in my experience, has a gap to market on the rent. So how quickly can we get them up to market? And what does that do to our numbers? Because it obviously enhances them nicely. In the Canandaigua market, applicants are telling us they're over at these high price, at these corporate places, the Hammocks, Pinnacle North, Center Point. These are owned by the big guys, Morgan Properties and Reedman and the Sands. These people own these properties. They are throwing $200 and $300 a month rent increases at their tenants. 2 to 3. So they're taking a property, an apartment that was renting for $1,200, and boom, your lease is up. Next month, it's $1,500. And what are they doing? They're calling me saying, I got to get out of here. But they're sophisticated investors, and they know the market can sustain it. They know they're going to lose a few people, and they're okay with that because they're going to get this money. It is too important to their business case to get these rents moved up to $1,500. And they're gonna move forward with it. So this, especially in this very strange bubble that we're in, getting rents to market is an important analysis for you. And we look at 5 and 10 year looks, and we look at exit. What's this building going to be worth, we think, in 5 years or 10 years, and build that into the plan as well. Because much of what we do in a buy and hold strategy is really a lot of your money's coming back to you when you sell. You're investing in the property. Yep, you're getting some cash flow and it's working out nicely. But the big payday is the day you sell, because of you've paid down your mortgage, X amount. The property's gone up. You've invested, so it's gone up further. You got your rents up, so it's going up further. And that's the time when you're gonna, I'll say cash in. Yeah. So this was looking at that exactly that 437 South Main. We looked at a series of different opportunities on that particular property. I'll skip through some of this because it was, I've touched on it, but we looked specifically at how we could change this property, how we could invest in it, and what the opportunities would be if we were able to remodel the 5 apartments or add 2 new apartments. Here's our as purchased. Here's the seller's numbers, and here's the cap rates that we we're changing. You can see here's our goal cap rate was greater than 8. That's kind of old school. That's a tough number to hit these days. But we're getting 10, 9, 10, 11, 9, 7.7 is our 7.0 is our worst case analysis. So just gives you an idea. It is so powerful to be able to just go in here and plug in a new number and say, boom, okay, what's it look like if this happens, including the downside? What if my vacancy rates increase and the like? And all I do in Excel is I just push this over to insert a column. I copy the column over and I make changes. It's super simple and powerful. Last night, our broker called us and said, hey, there's a property on Main Street that's available. Last night, I'm running 3 scenarios on this property that we haven't even looked at yet. We looked at it this morning, and we got to decide if we're going to make an offer on it tonight. But I'm feeling pretty comfortable that we've been able to run some quick scenarios on it almost in real time and come back and decide whether we think this is a good one for us. Okay, this gross rent multiplier is it's super simplistic. I assume many of you have dealt with this, but it is simply what is the annual rent divided into the purchase price. So if you looked at a property that's going to generate $20,000 in rent income, I'm not even talking about expenses, just what are the rents? $20,000 a year. That might be typical for a double that rents for $1,000 per side. And excuse me, that'd be 24,000. If you're comfortable with a multiple of 8 in your market, well, then you're going to be up. That property's probably going to sell somewhere around $200,000. So very close to simply just taking your multiple times the rent figure. It's tied directly to your cap rate, which is a solid financial analysis number, if you make an assumption about expenses. So in this model, I've just said, hey, expenses are about 50%. In our experience, that's actually a conservative number. Sometimes they're 40, 45, 50% in our experience. But if I lock in at 50, then I can immediately take the expenses off of the rent, come up with a net operating income, and create a cap rate. And you can see, so for a gross rent multiple of 5, I'm going to generate a cap rate of 10. At a gross rent multiple of 10, I'm going to have a cap rate of 5. So it's just simple math. Many of the properties today that we see are with gross rent multiples of 7 or 8, and the cap rates are in the mid 6 to 7 range in terms of what you can achieve. So this is just a way to kind of have a better understanding of the power of gross rent multiple and its sister metric, which is cap rate. Okay, so let's jump to cap rate. Everybody's probably somewhat familiar with this. This chart puts this together in a very simplistic approach. So what is it? The cap rate is the rate of return expected to be generated by a rental property. So it's the rate of return of the overall property. You're buying an asset. What is the asset going to return to me? Forget about financing, forget about some of the complexities, just simply, I'm going to take on an asset. What is the power of that asset in terms of its return to me? Obviously, a 10% cap rate, 10 years later, your earnings equal what you paid for the property. It's that simple. And I'm leaving out a lot of factors about discounting future returns and the like, but it's that kind of a summary. And the example they use, property price at $250, rent at $1,700, operating expenses at 4. So 12 times 17 minus 4, 16,000 of net operating income divided into the 250. They're coming up with 6.56%. That is the cap rate for this particular property. Biggest advantage, efficient and easy comparison of two different projects of looking at your past, what you've purchased in the past, or maybe 2 projects that you're looking at the same time. You can quickly evaluate which one is more powerful in terms of the profit return. The biggest disadvantage is it does ignore financing. So it's not looking at, well, what's it going to cost to finance the property? So that's I'll say a disadvantage to this particular approach. So I won't get too accounting-ese here, but you should understand what goes into cap rate and what doesn't go into cap rate. So all of your recurring income is included in the calculation, but the purchase of the property, your capital injections are not. Expenses are all of your cash out-of-pocket expenses. So typical things like property tax, insurance, legal, maintenance, utilities, routine repairs, but not included are debt repayments, interest on loans, taxes, and depreciation. Depreciation, of course, is I'll call it a fictitious expense. It's not in this deal, and none of these, the taxes aren't, and the financing costs are not either. So it's simplified from that perspective. So the key question is, well, then, what's a good cap rate? And the answer is, it depends. So, and it depends on a lot of things. In today's market, so right there, that's a qualifier. In today's market, what's a good cap rate? So depending on asset type, multifamily, office, industrial, retail, hotel, they all carry different expectations for cap rates, depending on the investors and the risk profiles that are associated with those asset types. And asset class tends to refer to the age of the property. So you have Class A properties are newer, less than 10 years old. And then you've got Class B, C, D that are older properties. And location, cap rates in New York City are different than cap rates for investors in Rochester, New York. In addition to that, though, and this is where you move from kind of the science or the the accounting approach into the art, you need to understand the condition and the deferred maintenance on the property. You need to know the neighborhood and the trend in the neighborhood. You need to understand the tenant quality. You need to look at this historic or other uniqueness of the property. You look at amenities and you look at the potential and the opportunities to make it a better, I'll say to fix it or to manage it better or to optimize its profitability. All of these things are overlays to this calculated number of cap rate. So this is some national data. If you look at tier 1, 2, and 3, and these are city locations, so tier 1 cities versus tier 3, I think is probably a tier 3 type situation. You can see Oklahoma and Milwaukee and Kansas and Pittsburgh, so somewhat similar in the picture of a Rochester, New York. And you can see the cap rates going up. The tier 1 cities down at 3.75, tier 2 at 4, and tier 3 at 4.5. That's because in these smaller markets, your risks tend to be higher. In the larger markets, the risks tend to be smaller, more manageable, more stability in terms of tenant populations and the like. At least this is what how the logic goes. So in our market, say a tier 3 market, there's people on a class A property that might be willing to do that deal at 4.5%. To me, that's a pretty low number, especially when financing is costing you north of 5 at this point. But if you're at a tier C and D property, an older property, you're going to expect a higher rate because you've got risks related to maintenance and roof repairs and all this kind of thing that you're going to demand a higher cap rate of more like in the 7% range. So that's some of the kind of the logic of how this comes together. In addition to that, cap rates are almost directly tied to T-bill rates. That you tend to have a 3 to 4% spread over the 10-year T-bill rate. And this shows the blue is the T-bill rates over the past since 2001 up to 2021, and then the green is the national averages of cap rates that are incremental to the T-bill rate. And so what's happening to T-bills? The Fed just raised 3/4 of a point last month. They're going to go another 3/4, maybe even a full point. This is unprecedented this month. And so T-bill rates are going to go up. People still expect their premium, and cap rates realistically are going to go up. When cap rates go up, the price people are willing to pay for property goes down. You're not going to get that return, given that the rents are fixed, except to pay less for the property. So that's some of the dynamics that are going on in this in the market that we're in today. Okay, so we look at scenario analysis or what if analysis. We use that financial tool to take a look at the property and say, okay, here's how it sits. Here's the rents it's producing. Here's I'll say how it's undermanaged potentially, and what can we do to make it a better property if we were to take it on? Because these become very relevant strategies and considerations when you're deciding on how you're going to price or what you're going to be willing to pay for a property. So we look at just some basic things. Are the rents to market? Can we divide spaces and go from 1 apartment to 2 apartments? We've done this quite a few times in our properties, and believe me, you get much higher rent on 2 apartments than you get on 1 apartment. We convert unleased space to leased space. We've done this with storage rooms. We've done it with abandoned space on second floors of downtown buildings. We move utility costs to the residents. We don't want any utility bills. And when we have a property with no landlord meters, we've hit the holy grail in terms of utilities. Light remodels, new floors, paints, appliances, cabinet doors, major remodels where we demo the place and look at a different class of apartment at a much higher rent level. So these are the types of scenarios that we're looking at, and it's all about thinking out of the box, thinking creatively. Ideally, somebody else is looking to buy that property. and you've got to outthink them. You've got to realize, oh my gosh, there's a missed opportunity here. And we can take advantage of that especially if we've thought of it, and they haven't, because you're going to fold that into your analysis model, and maybe you're willing to pay a little bit higher for the building because of that, and you're going to win the deal over the next guy that didn't have that kind of creativity. I've got a friend and a business partner, Peter Ross, right over here. And Peter is just brimming with ideas. He's doing this crazy thing of Airbnb being bedrooms. Now, I've heard of Airbnb being a house or a condo or an apartment, but he's Airbnb being bedrooms. And then you're renting a bedroom for the night, and it's common kitchen, common bath, common living area. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. This can't work, but it's working. There are people, there is a market to rent a bedroom. It's just blows my mind. But Peter's making it go, and I just love his insights because he's telling me, here's how I'm going to get this expense down. Here's a room. I think I can make that a 5th bedroom. I'm going to rent the garage. He's just thinking all the time about how to make this thing optimized in terms of rental income and profitability. And that's the kind of thing, when you look at a property, that's what you got to look at, is the out of box thinking that allows you to recognize that you can make some good money on this thing. So sensitivity analysis, not going in a lot of detail here, but you take, you made an assumption about utilities, or you made an assumption about rents or occupancy. So say you took a pinned occupancy at 95%, you can rerun it at 92%. You can rerun it at 98% and quickly see, okay, what's it do to my cap rate or to my net present value or to my cash flow on the property. And you begin to see, where am I sensitive? And pretty soon you see, oh my gosh, this particular measure is really important to deliver the profitability that I'm expecting out of this particular project. So these are the types of things that we'll toggle. We'll move and look at the mortgage payment at a 20-year amort instead of a 30 or a 15, and look at what that does to our cash flow. We'll look at rents up and down or flat. We'll look at purchase price. Do I need to offer less money because I'm not happy with the results? Expense assumptions, capital investment that may be needed, emergency repairs. So these are all things that just become what we would refer to as a sensitivity analysis to allow you to get a better gauge of a more full, complete picture of how that property might perform, because it's not going to perform the way you thought it was going to. Something's going to be different, maybe better, maybe worse, but it's going to be different. Okay, so this gets a little more sophisticated. Net present value analysis. When I was at Kodak and we were comparing projects and where Kodak should invest their money in developing new products, we did these kind of analyses all day long. Hidden in here is the ability to get above what's referred to as a hurdle rate or a discount rate, and be able to compare projects pretty quickly. So I'll just skip through this in the interest of time, but net present value is the value of all future cash flows, positive and negative, over the entire life of the investment, discounted back to present day. That, it sounds complex, and to some degree it can be, but it's a form of intrinsic valuation used extensively across finance and accounting, and all the big firms that are investing in properties are doing this kind of thing all day long. I've got a couple of examples, but I'll just touch on them briefly. So this is a chart for a net present value analysis. You start with a purchase price. You can see across the top here, years 1 through 10. So you typically look out a number of years, maybe 5, but maybe 10. And you look at your income, your expense, you look at your net operating income, the amount of rent increases that you think you'll be getting, the amount of expense increases you think you'll be getting. You look at your total investment, and then you use a discount rate. Discount rate is typically associated with your cost of capital. That's typically where you peg it, is what it would cost me to borrow the money, because that's my baseline. I want to make money above my cost of capital. So you plug in this one, I use 6%. And so here's all your summed up cash flows for the property. And here's the holy grail: you sell out And I've just pegged the property being sold at the same gross rent multiple as on day one, but it's a much higher price because the rents are up. And here's your cap rates that are associated with each year's, but an NPV of $146,000. So you paid $500,000 in. You've earned a certain amount of cash flow. You've discounted all that cash flow back to day one at 6% per year, and you're still clearing $146,000 above that. When you compare two projects, it could be very different in terms of their cash flows. You come back and you look at a number that is a direct comparison in terms of how much money you're going to make on this project, how much money you're going to make on that project. Also can be converted to an internal rate of return. In this case, you had a discount rate of 6%, but your actual return is 9.8. So it's a pretty decent project as shown. All these formulas are in Excel. So you need to do this kind of work. You gotta be pretty comfortable with Excel. So let me just finish up because I want to get to my quiz. So this just looked at what if I invest in the property and I get higher rents. And I end up with a higher net present value. I'm going to skip that internal rate of return. So here I am at my quiz. And this is more for fun than anything else, but this is a real property. We sold it. So I've got a real number in terms of where a willing buyer and a willing seller came together in terms of a price. So it's 20 units, 35 years old. Maintenance was in good condition. The roofs were 7 years old. The remodel status was, and again, at the right, this is as sold. So this is the day it was sold. This is looking at rents. If every apartment was at the highest rent for that type of an apartment, like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, I got maybe one's at 1,000, but some of them are at 850. If they were all at 1,000, and that's a legitimate argument because you have a proof point. I'm renting one for 1,000. There's no reason I can't rent them all for 1,000. And then what's a little more iffy and debatable with a buyer is what's the market rent, and that's a debate, but it's certainly a legitimate scenario to run when you're purchasing or selling a property. So let's focus on cap rate. So if you're looking for an 8% cap rate, as purchased, you'd get 1.2 million for the property. If you got all the rents to the highest for each apartment class, you'd get 1.46. And if you look at the full market rent being realized, then the property at 8% cap would yield $1.8 million as a value, as a sale price. So anybody want to venture a number of what you'd be willing to pay for this property? Sorry? Give us a guess. Well, I'll give you the answer. Maybe that's a. Okay, so here is the answer. The property actually sold for 1.56. So in the initial scenario, as purchased, the cap rate is 6.3, somewhat modest. If you get the rents all up to the best for each apartment class, then you're at a 7.5. So you see a quick path to 7.5 cap rate. And if you can get to market rent, same price, you get 9.7. So the buyer looked at this kind of analysis and said, and we said, we're okay with that number. And we did a deal. So this is, kind of how the rubber meets the road in making this thing kind of work. And I'm over time, so I'm going to shut down right there. Anybody got any questions for me? Sorry? So what do we use for vacancy? So this particular property, and it was in the numbers, the occupancy was at 100%. In our experience on this property, we might lose a month or two per year in rent. But in the Canandaigua market, we don't have any trouble renting apartments. And our turnover is low and the ability to replace is quite high. 100% is probably unrealistic. Maybe it's 98 or 99. It's high. Because we try, the only thing we want to lose is the time to clean the apartment. That's our objective. Doesn't always happen, but for simplification, we just assumed 100% in that particular deal. Some deals I might assume 95, 96. If you're negotiating, I would go back to the buyer and say, hey, I'm not going to do anything more than 90 or 92 or 94. Let him tell you why. Let he or she tell you why I should justify a higher occupancy rate. Yeah, good question. Any others? Okay. Thank you. Oh, jeepers, how long did that take me? What? 40.
Please continue to mingle.
Hey, good to see you. Yeah. Hey, did you meet Peter and Cheyenne?
I have not, but
Cheyenne,
Thanks for coming, everyone.